Hello, my fellow readers. Zydark Symphony 777 with a new video. Let me just move that down here. I was moving stuff around while I was setting up. But yeah, let's get on to it. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notification, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story, and finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is, well, it's not worth much in this context. I think I'm the only person to do this. So it means everything. So I decided to bunker down and play a game, a very, very fun game that I really liked called Touhou Monster TD, i.e. Touhou Monster Tower Defense. It is a really fun game, and before I even get to the tier list, I have to say, for a game only worth $20, $35 if you just get all the DLC. You don't have to. It's a really, really fun game. The only problems I really have with the game is there are minor translation issues. I mean, that stems from the fact that the game is not only developed by a game whose English is English is very much not their very first language, but also they're also people who are translating it whose English is not their very first language. But for a tower defense game, I think this is actually one of the better. Sorry, my computer, my controller wrapped around the microphone. I would have to say this is probably one of the more deep tower defense games I've ever played. I'm actually kind of a fan of tower defense. I played a lot of Dungeon Defenders. I played a lot of Bloons growing up. It was a lot of tower defense actually are really fun, but just how much shenanigans you can do. But I think Touhou Monster TD is actually one of the more creative tower defense games out there because of how it does things differently. So to do that, before we get to the tier list, I have to show the more just how the game functions. So this is the game. Instead of usually most tower defense have you just surveying the entire area as much as possible. However, in Touhou Monster TD, you're playing as a champion. There are four base champions, and then there's 3 DLC. There's Rimu, there is Yomu, Futo, and there's one more I can't remember. I cannot remember who the last one is. No. Oh no, it's just these 4. And then for DLC, you get Professor Surno. She's super smart. You get Iku Nagane and you get Fujiwara Moku as DLC champions. Mainly, unless just stick with Rimu. Spoiler alert, just stick with Rimu. Unless you're having fun, but that's not how we do things here. But yeah, back to the level real quick. Unlike other tower defense, it focuses exclusively on the character. I have Iku. I think Iku is the best champion, although I've heard a lot of people say that Moku's probably the best. I just like Iku because of what she brings to the table. There's very complex routes, and the game is very, very choke point heavy. There's lots of enemies you have a lot of towers that do very many things. You have enemies that not only do a lot of things, but also can counter your tower, so you have to be prepared at any time. But the main difference of this game to other tower defense games is one thing only. You summon a tower, you're stuck with it. You can't. I cannot get rid of the bunny. Come on, I need to get rid of you so I can do some drugs. Nope. Raisin's right there to stay. She's adorable, right? But yeah, not only that, but instead of rounds, these enemies instead of multiple rounds, it's basically one long round separated into waves, which is fine. That's actually make things really interesting because you have to, not only that, you have to constantly change where the towers go on the fly in response to whatever each level might throw at you. So there's surprisingly a lot of depth to essentially such a simple game, but it's actually really fun once you figure out what to do. Let's see if I can throw. Nope. But yeah, it's an overall just fun game that I'm having a little fun. So let's go back and go to the tier screen. Here I have all the towers available in order of when you get them in Touhou Monster TD. While I am counting the DLC towers, I am not going to count the Celestial Trial and Trial of Courage exclusive towers, mainly because you can't really figure out how to. First off, they're pretty much a gacha mechanic, fitting with the fact that those two areas introduce a lot of roguelite elements, so it makes sense why some of them would be like luck based to get them. However, a lot of them are just random insert fairy A's. They're just clones of other characters. It makes no sense. It really does make sense, unless you want to unless you're desperately wanting to get something like where would Remelia fit. No, I'm not going to count that. I'm only going to count based game. Celestial Trials and Trial of Courage are DLC. It really makes no sense to put them here. But yeah, let's just get into it. So there are actually 5 specific towers. There are Damaku towers, which are meant to do physical damage. There are spell towers, which not only do magical offense, but also usually have some kind of other ability to help other towers, usually utilities. There is blast towers, which are more or less your bread and butter AoE style attacks. They do splash damage, and that's pretty much all they do. There is summon towers. We'll talk about summon towers when I get to Alice right here. And then finally, there are special towers, which while they do offense, they're mainly going to use them specifically for utility purposes, whether to hold a choke point or to boost other towers in terms of ability. Basically, they're just meant to bolster choke points or help out with other towers in the various things they can do. But yeah, let's start with the Udange, Raisen Udange Inaba. If you actually watch some of my videos, I actually own a Fumo of Raisen in her snazzy Imperial Imperishable Knight outfit. Oh, come on. It's iconic. She looks like it's not Raisen without that jacket. And Raisen's going very strongly top of A tier. She is a no frills, bread and butter, always reliable tower. What does she do? Well, she simply fires a Damaku shot at an enemy that enters her range. Another thing that is unique about this is the fact that you can actually upgrade these on the fly, and they gain different abilities through that. So, wrong one. There we go here. With Raisen, if you get her to level 4, she fires 2 shots. This is actually the status screen. Here's the type of tower she is. That's how much damage she does at level 1. If she hits air ground, that's actually different. There's 3 different types of enemies. Let me finish this. Her range at level 1 and her speed at level 1. And at level 4, she basically doubles her attack, and at level 5, she triples her attack. So, say if her attack doesn't go up, at level 4, it becomes 16 damage, and then at level 5, it'd be 24 damage. But that's not it, because her attack does go up as you level her up. There's going to be prompts to tell you what happens when you level them up. And there are 3 main types of enemies, and this is where she is only weak points. There are regular enemies, which are certain that are just normal enemies. They don't have a lot of. They sometimes have defense, sometimes have magical defense, but are usually small. There's flying enemies, which are probably the weakest health-wise and defense-wise of the enemy selection. This is what flying enemies is mainly in the end game. What you're going to be using Raisen for. She falls off in the end game. Not that much. You're still going to end up using her because at the end of the day, she's really cheap. She doesn't have anything wrong with her. And really only either bulky enemies or enemies that are like really high physically defensive are really going to stop her, because anything else she's just going to mow down, especially if you have 2 Rysons. But at the end, you're mainly going to be using her to swat out flying enemies, because by the time you reach the end game, you're more likely going to have tower defenses that, while strong, are mainly going to be suited to dealing with ground enemies, and you need a tower to specifically deal with air enemies, which Ryson is your best shot. Basically, a lot of flying enemies tend to be faster, and can easily slip up and pass other towers because between either low damage or they're just slow enough that they can outspeed, get in and out of the range. No problem. They don't have, however, they can't counter Ryson that easily, so which is why she's really into it. It helps that there's not really a lot of physically bulky flying enemies. Like most of them, I think only the Pelican ship in the post game is the only really bulky flying enemy. The rest of them are just, she can deal with them no problem. But yeah, Ryson is your bread and butter. She doesn't do anything bad. If she is dealing with a group of enemies, whichever enemy enters her range first, she's going to actually aggro onto that specific enemy. So if it's like a bulky enemy, or say an enemy with like lots of physical defense, like a Momiji, Ryson's just going to have a lot of trouble, and the other enemies are just going to go right past her, no problem, which is really her only main weakness. So that's why she gets into A tier and not S tier. Spoiler, most of A tier is going to be used by towers that have not only pretty good damage, but also a lot of utility, except for one, which is just pure damage. But even then, the damage for that tower is insane. Cirno goes on top of B tier. It's kind of sad that the strongest is not really. She does fall off around the mid game, because around that time there's going to be a lot more enemies that she just can't, and that kind of causes her to be unable to keep up with. It's not Cirno's fault. Again, as the game goes on, you're going to find towers that are just going to counter enemies that are just going to be able to counter certain towers, and Cirno gets countered a lot. Why is this? Well, Cirno has 3 abilities. At level 1, as a base passive, whenever she hits an enemy with a spell, they suffer a debuff that slows them down. At level 3, she has a chance to freeze an enemy, basically referencing how Cirno likes to freeze frogs, i.e. Suwako. And then at level 5, she actually gets another passive where any enemies that get near her basically become slowed down. So she not only can slow down enemies from range, but she can slow down enemies that are up close even more. And that actually makes Cirno a pretty decent... She actually is among your best towers at the beginning. Again, however, once you reach like past around Scarlet Devil Mansion and beyond, there's going to be simply too many towers that just simply counter Cirno. She's just not going to be able to keep up. It's an enterprising daring do if you do try and risk Cirno and go past the Scarlet Devil Manor, but you're really risking it because, again, at that point, either there is much more magically defensive tower enemies past Scarlet Devil Manor. There's just going to be a lot of the end game has a lot of magically defensive towers, and that's basically what screwed the big thing that screws Cirno over. Is just there's just, like I said, too many counters to really justify her, especially since her only real strength is locking down a choke point by slowing it down. You're going to be doing a lot of moving in this game, and so if you need towers to basically hold down checkpoints as long as possible, so you can quickly evaluate what you need to bolster that checkpoint, or if you're in an open spot, you basically just can use Cirno to pester. She is primarily used in a choke point, which is less I can say with Ryson. She can be used in a checkpoint. She can be used very long distance in like more open areas to snipe down enemies. While Cirno, her biggest use is in checkpoints because of her slowdown. Her slowdown passive, she just offers nothing else to the table, and just too many towers approaching the end game. Just counter her, just hard counter her. You'd rather use something with more utility that's gonna offset the magical defenses. Alice Matra Gold. Oh, this is kind of sad because I actually like the concept of summon towers in this game. Their whole concept is simple. A tower summons a group of miniature enemies to actually go onto the field and provide variable physical roadblocks for enemies. Their main purpose is to aggro enemies and keep them stuck in a choke point. Touhou Monster TD. I know in like a lot of other tower defense, choke points can be useful, but for the most part, a lot of tower defense games live and breathe by how well you manage choke points. And this one, with the fact that you can't really stop a round from happening, you pretty much have to endure it, meaning that managing checkpoints is just that much more important. If you can't manage the checkpoint, you're pretty much not going to win that game, because especially in the later maps where the maps actually get big and you have to keep moving around and keep managing, and some maps don't really have a lot of places you can put them. So knowing what tower is right for the job plays as much of a factor, which really is a long-winded to say Alice is in D tier. She's one of the weakest towers in the game. She falls off pretty much immediately because of how she works. So how she works is she basically summons a bunch of Shanghai dolls or Hornai dolls to basically block the road. She summons up to 5 for physical. One is a ranged one. And then she just slowly repairs them over time. Here's the problem with that. One, the dolls are not tanky at all. It would be fine if they were tanky, but they're not. This is something that all the summon towers have. They're all, with the exception of one tower, they're all pretty physically frail. And considering the fact that Alice doesn't have any utility out that, which is kind of sad because all the other summon towers, they have added utility to use outside of just summoning up, outside of summoning a summon to blockade. Dran has more utility, Sega has more utility, Kaguya has more utility, Kine has more utility, and just having 5 summons that, 1, aren't bulky, and 2, Alice does nothing but just repair them, doesn't really solve the issue. She just falls off way too quick. I understand not making the Alice doll specifically too bulky, because then she can probably infinitely wall everything by herself if you just hold down a checkpoint. But the problem is, as she stands right now, she is borderline useless, because she's just not, because her whole thing is about she should be the walling summon. And all the other summons have like alternate mechanics that are better balanced and much better done, especially in the early. She is one of the 3 starting towers, and the fact that she falls off so quickly, the only time you're ever going to use her is if you're forced to use her, because there are some challenge areas where you're stuck with like certain towers and you have to make use of those towers, and you're going to have to be stuck with Alice. That's fine, which again is a long-winded way of saying you'd rather use every other tower except for Alice. However, I will say Alice does have a use. That's why she's not the worst tower. There is a couple towers worse than her. She's the very top of D tier. However, the tower she used with is infinitely more useful, and let's just say it's more of indicative of how powerful the other tower is rather than Alice by herself. Oh boy. So yeah, top of D tier. She only really has one use, being that working with this girl right here. And that's it. Her dolls are just not physically defensive enough. If they had if they were balanced by the fact that they get randomized stats, like, oh, some of them might be physically defensive or some of them might be magically defensive, that would actually be a cool niche, because some of them may be able to wall off certain waves of enemies even more, but she just gets too overwhelmed easily for what she's trying to do, and the whole repairability just doesn't do anything because the dolls are just simply not good enough tanks to do anything about it. Tenchi. Tenchi is a hold on. Tenchi is top of C tier. Why is she not going any farther? Well, it's all about what she does. Well, what she does is if an enemy comes in range, she fires a keystone at it, and it causes AoE damage. Blast towers are the AoE towers, and that's pretty much it. She does get at higher level, she does have the ability to stun enemies. However, two things happen. One, the AoE damage, Oku exists. Oku is pretty much, bar none, the best blast tower in the game. And the moment you get Oku, you're simply not going to use Tenchi because Oku just does Tenchi's job so much well. And the stun effect, you rather use Yukari. Once Yukari is there, she's going to be a much better stunner and just has way more utility. There's no real reason to use Tenchi. Tenchi is serviceable across the game. It's just she's one of those towers where everything, other towers just simply outclass her so much that she just has. You rather use those other towers than use Tenchi. She's good, but not great. Oh boy. Next tower, Yamame Kuradani. Oh, this one is immediately sad. Yamame, oh boy. Yamame has one simple gimmick. She basically, whenever she hits an opponent with an attack, she poisons them, and does damage over time. Here's the problem. You want to know what the problem is? She has absolutely pitiful damage. She just can't DPS anything. Especially once you get Yukari, you're just not gonna want to use the Yamame. Because Yukari just outclasses her in every single way. This is the same thing with Tenchi, but to a much more severe degree, because you can use Tenchi, but you might as well not want to. While with Yamame, even when you get her, she's just just not a useless tower. She's not a useful tower, but she just doesn't offer enough of what she's trying to do, especially with the poison mechanic. And other enemies are just gonna out damage her and outspeed her. Just do everything better. Every single tower can just do what she does better. At least with Tenchi, you only really two towers outclass her. With Yamame, almost every tower outclasses her, which kind of makes sense that she's going into D tier. There are two other towers that are slightly that are worse than her because she can be useful theoretically. She also has a niche ability that slows down enemies. It actually is better than Cernos because it's not reliant on hit. It's actually a slight AoE effect, or more of a area of slight AoE where she fires a web where the enemies are, and then it just slows down all the enemies in that section. That's really it. But again, you rather use once you get Yukari, you're never going to use Yamame. And even then there's only going to be one or two levels that you're going to use Yamame in normally, and that's before you get Yukari. She just doesn't do much. Kogasa. Okay, let's get Kogasa out of the way. Kogasa is interesting because she actually got buffed in the original game when she came out, because guess what? Some of these towers actually got buffed as the DLC came out. Kogasa was in the running for the worst tower in the game at launch, because she had probably the lowest attack. She wasn't particularly fast, and her special ability, the main reason you would want to use her, was tied directly to set attack. Basically, how she works is, if any opponent approaches her, as in really approaches, meaning that they have to be near her, she basically has a chance of as a normal attack, if she hits them, they have a chance of getting spooked, which actually increases as she levels up. But at level, I think it was 3 or is it 4? Level 3, that normal attack becomes an AoE that can affect any amount of enemies. Basically, how it works is when she spooks them, they go running in the other direction over a certain amount of time. That gives a chance for other towers to pick off, even specifically like bulky enemies, and give them a much fairer chance of beating him. The problem was, until she was buffed, the fact that this was directly tied to her normal attack is really, really bad if the tower was not particularly had high damage speed. Because you have to be attacking a lot of times in order for a random AoE to work. However, she did get buffed where, as you level her up, not only does the range increase, but the speed actually increases. She actually becomes very, very quick. She can rack up damage really quickly, which is fine because she's, I think, the first special. Yeah, she's the first special sour. So so the damage is not what you're going to be using her for. You're going to be using her for that AoE, and the AoE is actually really done. Now that she can attack very quickly, she gets a lot more use of the AoE. It becomes really useful. You can use her to stall choke points, gives you more time to do what you're trying to do, move towers around, check choke points to see if you have to physically attack the enemies, because you can physically attack them in this game. Kind of like Dungeon Defenders, where you have certain moves and they're locked behind a mana wall. This game has that. Move towers around because they're just going to keep going backwards. So you can put more pressure on them. You can set up more towers to get more time to get a tower settled, and also reevaluate certain choke points. She has a lot of utility that just made her what would have been the worst tower, although honestly, she would have been honest competition, to quite honestly one of the better towers in the game. Like I said, you're not using her for the damage. She's a special tower. Which means she's going to be used for the utility. You're using her for the utility, and the fact that she attacks so fast, meaning you're going to get a lot more mileage. Offset utility, offset the AoE. She's just a great tower. Again, her really only weakness is that she is completely useless in more open areas. You have to use her in choke points. The better towers are going to be more that you can use in choke points as well as in open areas. The fact that she's so reliant on being in a choke point does hamper her a little bit, but not enough to really drag her anywhere. But I think mid A tier. Yeah, Ran Yakumo. There's no question. Ran is literally the best tower in the game. The moment you get Ran, you're pretty much not using anything else besides Ran for the most part. She offers so many basics. First off, her normal attack. Not only is it spell damage, but it's the only attack that can hit multiple enemies. Yeah, it's 3 enemies, but consider the fact most spell and Damaku towers only really focus on 1. Having the passive ability to just attack 3 enemies at once is something only the blast towers do, and Oku's really the only blast tower you're going to want to consider running. That just makes Ran so useful. However, it doesn't stop there. At level 3, she can summon Chen, which not only acts as a summon, which means they're going to draw aggro to her, but Ran can also now has the ability to do physical damage. Out of all the towers, Ren is the only tower that can deal both physical and magical defense. Barely any towers in the game have defense from both. I think only like one or two. No, it has to be. I think there's. No, wrong one. Right now. Yeah, I think. I think there's only one in it. I can't think of it. I think only no. I for sure thought there was like one enemy that had both. Yeah, there it is. The tentacle. I think there's one more. I think it's no. Yeah, I think only the tentacles of the third area boss is immune to both physical and special, meaning there is literally nothing that can really hard counter Ran, and I think that's the main reason why she's in S tier. Just the fact that no tower can truly permanently counter her. There are some towers. There's the Notori X's, which can attack from the distance to basically knock out Chen. However, they're only physically defensive, which means Ran's going to take them out anyway. She does have a weakness in the fact that she's not exactly has the best long range, but that doesn't matter when she just has so many options. The fact that she can do so much, and we're not even getting into the fact we're not done with Chen. At level 4, Chen's attack stun, not only that, but her defense and HP increase. And then finally, at level 5, Chen, when she attacks, can forcibly draw aggro on any nearby enemies. More specifically, any enemies that might have gotten past Ran, which is a major plus. The fact that not only does Ran summon Chen and basically cause aggro, but she could force the aggro on enemies that went past her, basically giving all towers in the area a massive chance to just basically wail on the enemy. That is absolutely massive. And the fact that she's the only tower that does physical and magical attack, meaning that you're just never not going to use her. If you don't use her in this game, you're pretty much handicapping yourself because of just how much she brings to the table from a attack issues, because she's actually pretty strong. Chen is pretty strong. I think Chen is actually the bulkiest summon, which again just speaks to how much she can answer with. The fact that she can stun enemies when Chen attacks, the fact that Ran can hit both grounded and airborne enemies, and the fact she does not have a counter in this game. It is next to impossible to counter. You can stall her, but you can't beat her. There's just nothing that beats Ran. It's just there's no tower that comes close to just what Ran brings to the table from a utility, from a defensive, from an offensive to a utility standpoint. She just has no equal. Oku is an A tier. Oku does one thing, and Oku does one thing really well. She does a lot of damage. Basically, when you get her on the field, she basically summons a tower, a ball of basically a miniature sun, and then when it explodes after a certain amount of time, it damages all enemies in the range. Okay, so let me just go back here. Yeah. Ryuji Utusho. Yeah, deals AoE and stuns enemies. The fact that she can stun enemies is actually really nice, especially since as she levels up, the stun chance actually, not only does the stun chance get higher, but also the stun duration. And even worse, at level 5, she just gets a passive damage buff that just being near her causes them to just get damaged. Ryuji is the main reason why Alice is not bottom of D tier, because if you have Utusho or I'll just call her Oku, you have Oku and Alice in a choke point, you're pretty much set, because unless you're dealing with airborne enemies, but then you're just gonna set a Ryzen nearby to deal with said enemies. They will infinitely wall enemies because any enemy that gets near them, they're gonna be put on a timer. Because Blast, I don't think Blast it does physical damage. However, Oku's damage is so high that even like physically bulky enemies, they're not going to matter that much in the long run, because not only is she going to do a lot of damage, but just being near her can basically just hold on a checkpoint, because Alice will just at least slow them down enough that, hey, Oku will just completely wipe them out. And of course, with Alice doing chip damage, it's fine. Granted, again, it has weakness towards air enemies, as do all blast towers, but Oku is fine. She just has such a high damage that it offsets the fact that she doesn't really have much in the way of utility. Hence why she's going to be mid to low A tier. If she didn't have that high damage, she would be high. She would be much lower. Speaking of high damage, Marissa is just basically Oku at home. She has the same gimmick where she gets the mini Hakuro, does the Master Spark, does not a lot of spell damage. However, it's massively worse because of how Marissa works. She only really gets one ability, and as you level up, the Master Spark lasts longer and does more damage. However, she cannot do much against faster enemies. At least Oku, if you get near her, it could passively damage you. And especially at level 5, she's actually surprisingly fast at level 5 that she could probably catch them. All Marissa has is high damage. That's all she does. And the reason she's lower than Oku, the fact that enemies can literally outrun it. She has such a she has more range than Oku, but it doesn't matter that she doesn't track enemies. She only really fires where the first enemy enters her range. And if it's a fast enough enemy, they can literally outrun the Master Spark. Meaning, yeah, good job, Marissa. Yeah, you're walling anything past that first enemy, but it doesn't matter if the first enemy just goes right past you and then out of your range, immediately. There's that. So yeah, Marissa, high damage, but she just doesn't have, she's just worse Oku. Just use Oku. You're not gonna go wrong with Oku. Nitori Kawashiro. Okay. Yeah. Oh, this hurts. Because I like the idea of Nitori being a sort of more faster counterpart to Ryzen. Basically, there's Ryzen in, let me actually split, okay, so, so both of these operate on the same principle. They're basically high-functioning, high-distance towers that are meant to deal lots of damage really fast. Ryzen's actually the more powerful, but Nitori is actually the faster. This is actually a fine design philosophy, because then you can pick and choose depending on which map, which one you want. However, one problem comes with Nitori. She has a reload mechanic. And that pretty much just sinks Nitori into D tier. Why? Well, every time when she defeats an enemy, she automatically she has a clip. She has a lot of DPS, meaning she can do a lot of damage and rack a lot of damage really, really quickly. And even on level 4, she gains a passive where her shots will actually knock back enemies, mainly either physically bulky or giant enemies that have a lot of health that you need to push away. It's actually very useful for those type of enemies. However, the problem arises with how she works in practice. Say you have an opponent, you're notorious facing an enemy with one HP, and there's another enemy behind it. Well, she starts to fire, she kills the enemy, and then she reloads. Yeah, you can see the problem with Notori right then and there. I don't understand the design philosophy by just why it wasn't designed to just automatically give her a reload passive if she defeats an enemy. I think that would actually make her much better. And she's also one of the few towers that actually got a buff. Her reload speed actually was originally 2 seconds, and then it just decreased to 1.5. It's still too slow. With what she's offering, you might as well just use Ryzen. Because Ryzen's just gonna do the job much better without the need to reload all the time. If Notori didn't have this reload thing where she defeats an enemy, she automatically reloads, she would actually be right here, right next to Ryzen. She still wouldn't be great. She would still be out of the S tier because she just doesn't offer any utility. And even the whole knockback thing is such a niche utility that it barely ever comes up. It doesn't come up enough. It's just, and the fact that the knockback can actually push enemies outside of her range, and therefore she just stops aggroing on them, which makes things even more annoying. You have to bring her. You have to bring her into D tier. The reload gimmick is just a poor thought out decision that needs more buffs to even be worth considering over Ryzen, who is the first tower you get in the game. Like, you're pretty much gonna play the first level of the game with pretty much just Ryzen and Alice. Oh boy. Yuka Kazami. Yuka is a very, very high maintenance tower. Yuka has one main gimmick. Let me actually just get her. Excuse me. Let me actually show what she does. I need to actually go to a specific level. This works. Oh. Okay. And I just realized I did not put Yuka in. Okay. Let me get Yuka. For some reason, it's spelled with one U in this game. So, which kind of says all you need to know about the poor translation. Okay. Let me just move this out of the way. This. Summon, where is she? Okay. Yuka has one gimmick. You place her in there, she summons a flower. How this flower works is that over time, it's actually going to stop popping out blue points. Blue points are used to basically buy your towers and upgrade them and get all these little goodies. And the more she levels up, the more flowers she summons, and the more blue points she gets. You can see the issue we might have with a tower like this. The simple fact is she needs 4 times the amount of space that you can just plop 2 towers right here to do the same job, to cover the same space that just one Yuka is going to have. Yes, Yuka is smug, and she really wants those flowers. And the blue point, the whole blue point restoration is worthless, considering the fact that, let's see, are they here? No, they're not here. But this game also has what's called celestial points. And I wanted to bring this up with this because there are 5 celestial points. One is it increases your attack damage. Next one, another one increases your firing speed. Another one increases your range. There's one that switches the attack, basically the type of attack you're going to do. So instead of doing physical, you're doing magical. And then there's the final one, which just plopping a tower on it does what she does. Give out blue points. The fact that and these die too. Yes, they do attack enemies, and she can rack up a lot of damage really quickly. In fact, there is a level where you pretty much need to use her because she's actually the best counter to the third boss, because she's the only one that can not only rack up enough damage, but is also the only tower immune to the tentacle smacks that boss uses and still rack up damage. You're gonna have to use her here, but she is just way too high maintenance. She doesn't offer enough reward for putting in the time to do her. She takes up way too much space. In the later games, she's gonna be completely phased out simply because there's gonna be levels where there's not a lot of space, which means you can't make the most out of her with a character who just needs so much space. She is very map reliant. The map she is useful on, she can put in the work. But yeah, I can't put her anywhere, but see, I'm gonna put her below Tenchi. Tenchi is just immediately more useful. You have to get her to level 5 just to even remotely get her to be useful. I'm not putting her into lower tier because on higher difficulties, I think you're gonna have a harder time getting more blue points, and so she's gonna come in clutch more and more often as you get deeper into the difficulties, into the better. So it's always at least worth considering on higher difficulties, however niche it may be. Kaguya Horii-san. Oh boy. Kaguya is an interesting one. Let me remember where I put her. Yeah, I know where she put. And also Nitori over Yamame. So what is Kaguya's gimmick? Kaguya has a very simple gimmick. She is another summon tower. However, her towers are remote, which means you place her somewhere and they follow a certain path where the enemies are. And if the enemies are there, they basically just draw aggro and just stall them and do a lot of damage. I think these are the most physical. These are the strongest towers. I think either Kaguya or Sega have the strongest summons, and I can't remember which one specifically has it. Oh well. They both fulfill different niches, but yeah. And simply as the game goes, as she levels up, she's just able to summon more rabbits, and they do more damage, and they have more health. She also gains puzzles, which allows her to attack flying enemies, which is at least unique for a 7 tower, which, well, would have been unique if Ran didn't exist. Dang you, Ran! Why must the Fox Mama be so good at the game? But yeah, Kaguya is very niche. The problem with Kaguya, and the reason why I'm going to put her in B tier, is simply how the AI of the rabbits work. They do follow a pattern, however, they tend to get really, really stuck on any path that splits. So, like, say, they're going down, and they basically just go down, and there's a split. Most of the time, they're only going to stick to one path. It's really awkward. And it can cause a lot of problems because you're thinking, oh, you're trying to get them to go down this path where enemies are, and then they don't. And the fact that she's also like the slowest tower to summon them. She has like a 25. Her reload is like 25, which is really, really higher. Let me actually show you. Like, for comparison, this is the reload time to resummon a tower. So it's 12. Rand's, you don't see it, but it's actually, I think, slightly lower than Alice's. Like, I think it's only 10 or 11. You have Sega, which is 12, and then you have Kaguya, which is 12. But not really, because as she levels up, it's just going. It's actually just going to go. It's just going to get more and more. Yep. So, like, I gotta actually show how Kaguya works. Okay. There we go. Like, see? She's summoning the rabbit. There you go. See, and you actually see it shows 12 on the screen, but it's actually 25, which is a massive fucking oversight. I get why Kaguya's has to be the slowest. Like, to put this in perspective, yeah. See, Sega's are actually 12, so it's weird that Kaguya's say 12, but it's actually 25. Like I said, it's at least balanced by the fact that Kaguya's towers are mobile. So it makes sense why hers will be the slowest. However, it's way too slow. It is massively too slow. And Kaguya is also a very high maintenance tower because you have to be careful where you place her. But I can see why they had to keep it so high, because if they gave her the ability to summon towers way too fast, she actually becomes broken, and the fact that she can hit airborne enemies, yeah, I could see why. But as it stands right now, she's a very high maintenance tower. You have to be very careful. She's very map dependent. The more alternate directions a map will have, the less useful she's gonna be. But if there's like more straightforward paths, she's actually pretty useful in those maps. It really depends on the map. Sega Kaku. Okay. Sega is, if it wasn't for Rand being a summon tower as well, Sega would be the best tower. Where did I put her specifically? I thought I put her in A tier. Nope. Sorry, I accidentally clicked on that. Give me a minute. There goes over right here. Sega only summons two summons, a pair of Yoshiko Miyoras. What is it? Yoshiko, what is it? I cannot remember what it's called. Miyako Yoshika. I don't know if that's the right name because I do misspell a lot of stuff here. Yeah, she summons two Yoshikas, and they actually gain a passive starting from level 2. Anytime they defeat an enemy, that enemy turns into Yoshiko. And it doesn't have to be Seija that has to be the one to defeat them. As long as they're in her range and they're defeated, they turn into a Yoshiko. So you can easily use any other tower. You can use any other tower. Let me show. Yeah, let me show this, because I think this is actually kind of important. Okay. Yes. And then summon. Okay. I'm actually showing how it works. She can attack. No, it has to specifically be Yoshika. You see them. It splits. Yeah. Okay, so any enemy that specifically gets killed by a Yoshika, And you can see right here why the Yoshigos are better. Because not only are they doing damage, they're also healing themselves. Yeah, see? Anytime they defeat an enemy. Yeah. This here. Yeah, they don't. Okay. Yeah, so they don't heal. But they're actually pretty tanky once you level them up. Yeah, I think it only happens when they get to level 5. They don't have any defenses, but the fact that they can snowball that fast and just if you place her on the right spot at the right time, she can infinitely wall pretty much any choke point. And the fact that she can attack, so it does help out. However, she does have the balance, the fact that she completely uses without the Yoshikas. She's very much defined by the Yoshikas getting that first kill and snowball and causing that snowball. If she can't cause that snowball, she's pretty much useless. Granted, other towers can help her. She just has to be the one to. The Yoshigos just has to be the one to get the final kill in order to start that snowball. It is very fair because I think she's not really popular amongst a lot of people because I think she's like a necrophiliac, I think. So she does better by herself away from other towers or with other Segas. So it makes sense. The only reason she's not S tier is simply because she needs to have the Yoshika specifically to start the snowball process. If she can do that, then she can pretty much completely turb stomp a crew. Is really useful. But yeah, that's it. Yukari Yukumo. S tier. Utility. That is what Yukari brings to the table. Yes, she, along with Yamame, is probably the weakest tower in the game. However, Yukari actually supplements this, which is what Yamame should have did. Where, let me just switch to where the longer she stays, also she has nice butt. The longer Yukari attack solidifies on an opponent, the more damage it actually gets damage ramp up, which is massively important. That's really good. Despite the fact only having a tower attack of once. It doesn't really matter if you're, say, dealing with a bulky enemy, and then that one damage just goes up to 10, like almost instantly with how fast she fires. It's actually she has the highest speed of any tower. I will gladly show you right now. Yeah, I will gladly show you. Just show you how fast she fires. Level 1 Yukari. Let you speed things up. And watch. Yeah, you could see. See, and it's ramping up even more. There is cooldown, so if there's a group, she can do one enemy, does more damage. Go to the next enemy, that damage still ramps up. It's bad. See, this is how you balance low attack points good. You just simply have a lot of utility with that low attack by just getting more damage the longer it stays on an enemy, or the more often it's fired in a row. At level 3, she gains the ability to use a gap to teleport the enemy farther away from where they have to go, basically giving more towers the time to deal with said enemy. It can also affect larger enemies. At level 4, she, instead of doing it to a single enemy, she does it to a group. And then at level 5, she summons a train. I don't know why it says trap instead of train. It's a train. And not only does it follows a random path, so it might not, but it's always going to get a path that enemies are on, unlike Kaguya's Lunar Rabbits. But not only does it deal damage, but it also deals knockback, so you're pushing them back even farther. Yukari is, while not having the all-encompassing options that Ran has, she's by far the tower with the most utility attached to her. And just like Ran, once you get her, you're just not gonna use anything else unless you desperately want a challenge and you're handicapping yourself. Yukari isn't easy S tier. She just offers so much in terms of what she can do in a tower. She can pretty much solo certain towers, certain levels by herself by just placing her near the area because of her damage ramp up. It's just insane of what she can do. Yuyuko Sayoshi. Yuyuko is literally a better Marissa. Still not as good as Oku because she's basically like a mixture of Oku, Marissa, and Seiga. She has the same snowballing attributes. At level 1, she summons ghost butterflies, deals some damage. However, at what's the level? At level 3, I'm getting tired. She summons a giant butterfly to travel along a straight line and does a lot of damage to any enemy that passes. However, the reason why she's at number in the A tier is her level 5 ability, where she opens up a ghost fan and gains a temporary buff that anytime an enemy that she kills, that enemy, when it dies, it releases a swarm of butterflies that creates an AoE and does damage. And it can stack. So, say you're killing one enemy, it does the AoE, that kills another enemy, causes another AoE, it can snowball really quickly. And the fact that she's probably the strongest damage-wise of the strongest spell tower in the game. She might have not a lot of use because you get her near the end and there's not really a lot of tower. And by that point, there's just a lot of towers that are just magically defensive. And she is very tower map reliant, just like it. But the fact that she can just do so much and deal so much damage, like Oku, kind of makes her good. The fact that she's very map reliant. Some maps she's just not. If the map has a lot of magically defensive enemies, she's not going to do that much. She's still going to put a lot of hurt because her damage is just that high. But she doesn't offer much in the way. She offers literally nothing in the way of utility and the buff she has with the AoE, it's not a permanent buff. It's only a temporary buff. Granted, you get an easy tell with the gigantic fan opening up on top above her, but that's the fact that it's temporary kind of stifles it. I get why, because if she kept it permanently, that would honestly make Yuyuko broken. That would actually just easily push her into S tier. I can see why they had to balance that. But yeah, there's Yuyuko. Oh boy, Komachi. Oh, this is gonna hurt. She is by far the worst tower in the game. Let me show you what. Oh, did I accidentally hit my microphone? Oh no! Don't hit my microphone. Switch here. Yep, there we go. I have to actually show you how she works because of context. This is why she's so bad. One thing is she's technically supposed to be a summon tower. The problem is, here's the first issue. She doesn't draw aggro, like, at all. So what's the point of her having physically defensive and magically and magic defense on her, I will never know. And you can see what she's doing. Like she's actually struggling to deal with these wimpy enemies. That is sad. You think, oh, does she have utility? She is a blast class tower, so she does deal with AoE. However, there is a big problem with that. She's unaffected by springs. Basically, the springs that increase range, increase speed, can switch the stats, the types of damage that they do. Komachi is unaffected by those. What? Yeah, it says magic spring, but the fact of the matter is, one, why doesn't she draw aggro? Because she's specifically designed. She seems to be designed specifically for a a sort of blast style summon tower, but she doesn't aggro enemies. She has the longest range in the game, but that doesn't matter if she has to physically walk to the enemies and stand right next to them to deal damage. She has an AoE, but the fact that she can't make use of the AoE because she's not aggroing them. At level 3, she has a chance of lowering enemies' guard, which is fine, but again, the fact that she has to struggle to do anything. And then at level 5, she has a chance to do a crit, which again means nothing if she can't aggro anything, which just makes so much sense. You could eat with the fact that she has stats, she has summon style stats, and she doesn't aggro anything. She doesn't really do a lot of damage. If she did have the summon, she'd probably be the most she would literally be the physically strongest tower, like the physically strongest summon, which would have been fine because the balance of the fact that she to balance out just how much she has going against her, you can't put her on springs to buff any of her stats even further. The fact that she has to physically move around, and the fact that she's instead of a tower going on and having utility, the fact that she has to physically get involved with the tower, and if she clears out an enemy, she has to actually walk across, giving them time to probably outrange her. She can't really do anything against airborne enemies. She can't do anything against fast enemies. The fact that you need her at level 3 to do anything for a chance to literally possibly lower the armor. And also the level 5 crit, wherein Eki can just critical hit as her main gimmick. Yeah, that just makes Ono's Komachi's just such a badly designed tower. It's really sad at how butchered she is. But let's move on. Aiki's bottom of B tier. Aiki really has nothing going for her besides flat damage output. Yeah, flat damage can be useful sometimes. I mean, look at Yukiko and look at Oku. However, they also have like other things going for it. For one thing, Aiki has 2 gimmicks. One, as a default, she can do a 4 times crit and pretty much almost one-shot everything unless they're physically dependent. But her other ability makes up for it. She can insta-kill anything. Well, anything except for bosses. I think they're hard-coded to be immune to the Sinner ability. Yeah. Trials of Sin. Attack has a chance to execute enemies, meaning she basically can one-shot them. It doesn't matter how much physically defensive you are. If she uses this, she insta-kills you. There is literally nothing you can do. But the fact that it's one, you don't have she doesn't have a visual cue for it, meaning you only have an auditorial cue or a visual cue if if she manages to land it. The fact that she's already a physically damage enemy, because there's a chance she may use the execution on weaker enemies, ones actually already one shot. It's really useful against either very physically or magically defensive enemies, or very high HP enemies, i.e. giants, which she can just one shot and just wipe away. That's the reason why she's high. But the fact that the execution is all she has going for her, and the fact that she is map reliant. If there's a lot of enemies with there's not a lot of giant enemies or a lot of physically defensive enemies / magical defensive enemies, she's not going to get much use. Simply because you rather use much faster towers or towers with better utility. But I think she's fine at the bottom of B tier. I think it's fine. Okay, so now we got to the DLC. There's 6 DLC towers. Let's get started real quick with Lady Whiterock. B tier, right behind Cerno. Letty is pretty much like a sideways version of Cerno. She's more of an offensive version of Cerno. She has the same main gimmick with freezing enemies and also doing frostbite damage. And a neat little thing is once she gets to level 5, if she actually attacks a frozen enemy, it actually pierces defense, which is actually something really cool. However, the fact that enemies have to be frozen, and she doesn't have the same utility as Cerno. I think they're both two sides of the same coin. If you want more offense, you use Letty. If you want more utility, use Cerno. I think overall, Cerno is just an overall better tower because she just has a lot more utility with not only her normal attack slowing down enemies, giving other towers the chance to deal with them much more readily, but also the fact that the passive she has to basically just slow down enemies get near her, giving them more chances to deal with enemies. While all Liddy has is a chance to basically deal a bunch of damage to enemies. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, she doesn't do anything bad. Concept-wise, she is probably the weakest tower. That doesn't mean she's bad. It's just, I personally would rather use Cerno. I'd rather have the utility rather than the pure offense. Because there are other towers that just do offense much more reliably. Dio Yusei. So the DLC towers have a unique gimmick where there's one tower that does a lot of things that are sideways, kind of like differing versions of already previous towers, and then you have the other one which actually encourages a different playstyle. Dio Yusei is the one that encourages the other playstyle. She doesn't really do much by herself. However, she has several abilities. Let me get to it. Right here. As a passive, all her attacks will occasionally deal AoE damage. Alright, that's fine. However, she is a special tower. You're going to use her for the utility. And that is, at level 3, she will actually drop green points, which are basically the points allow you to attack. So let me just show you right here. You can see at the bottom left corner, by pressing A, she can attack, and she can do spells. They all use mana, or I guess AP. Is it AP? Let me just... Yeah, insufficient AP. Dio Yusei, at level 3 and start, would occasionally drop the stars that basically allow her to fill them up so much faster. And this is basically encouraging a more proactive champion playstyle, which is you don't use a lot of towers. You mainly use the champion to deal with the enemies. You use Daiusei to just really block off more to basically pester the enemies while you basically guard the checkpoints by yourself. It's actually a very encouraging playstyle. I think it's very unique. And not only that, we haven't gotten to her main passive buff. We're at level 5. She gains a passive where she actually turns into a mobile speed spring, which means passively she actually makes other towers around her much faster. It's really good. Daiusei is just a really, really good utility tower. S tier. It's just, if you want to have a little fun, want to do a different playstyle, go with Daiusei. The other two playstyles are not as good, but it's actually pretty fun, nonetheless. Sho Tomomaru. Oh, she is the second worst tower. She is... Okay, so concept-wise, she's not a bad idea. Basically, she's a burst tower that has a mobile... So unlike the rest of the towers, which deal AoE, but that have crappy distance. I think Tenchi has the best distance for a tower, but you're using Sho for the passives. So, oh boy. Here's the problem. Just like with Marissa, enemies can dodge your attacks. And for a blast enemy, yeah, it is balanced by the fact that even if you miss, it can still deal damage to other enemies. Well, the fact it can miss is such a sad oversight that it's pretty hilarious. There's also the fact that she's not really that powerful. Granted, on level 3, she can shoot out multiple projectiles, which means she can offset the chance of doing poor damage by doing a lot of damage, actually. But level 5. This is the reason why she's so low. So, as a passive, at level 5, she has the chance to either create a blue star, which is something that is exclusive to her, and basically a blue star means you get a free upgrade for any tower. So you want to summon, you don't have enough points to make a level 4 tower level 5, just grab a blue star. There you go, you got a free upgrade. There you go. Or she can create a blessing point. Here is the issue. This was the tower I tested the most on. I couldn't get a blessing point off. I literally don't think she can actually create a blessing point because it's just... And the blue star is such a useless thing because it's... In Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a thing called win more cards where you have a card that's just so insane be created that it's really only used for if you're already in a winning position and you'd rather just use something else. That's basically Sho. She's just a win more tower because by the time you get to make use of the blue stars, you're pretty much already... Every other tower is probably almost already fully upgraded, and you don't need her. I do think she might have some more use in the higher difficulties. That's mainly because I haven't tested Sho in the higher difficulties yet, so I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that specific. But the fact that by the time you would want to use the blue star buff, you're probably already set in what towers you're using, and when the fact that her shots can miss, the fact that I literally did like 10 games in a row to try and force a blessing point to see if she can even make one. She didn't make one. She just doesn't do anything. She just doesn't do enough, and what she can do is just ultimately massively useless in the long run. It's just sad. Toyo Sadotsumi no Miko. S tier. Miko's the tower that encourages different playstyle. Instead, this one encourages a solitaire playstyle. Because how Miko works is she's just a massive flat damage output. But it's like, but wait a minute, didn't you say that all the S tiers are more utility? Yes, Miko has utility as well. However, utility is in a really roundabout way. So how does she work? Well, to do that, I need to go to a map. So, here you go. So basically how she works is you plop her here, and I'll start the battle. She does a flat damage, however, the more you put, basically how they work is the towers will conjoin. Yep, see? They'll actually conjoin, and if they're conjoined, they do more damage. So you can see that. Yeah. So you can see right there. You see the one Miko did 13 damage. However, 2 Mikos actually did 33 together. Attacking at once did 33 damage. So how it works is you basically 1 Miko, 2 Miko, 3 Miko. Okay. 33. See, 53. It ramps up quickly. And that's level 1 Miko. The reason why she's S tier, despite only being a physically damaging tower, is the fact that if you're skilled enough, 1, she can pretty much cover the entire map literally by herself. Granted, you have to be very skillful of where you put her, because different maps have different geometries and different sizes, so you need to actually be careful. The fact that even if you're like a physical trip, have 3 physical defenses, the fact that she can almost one-shot you, like, okay, so I tested that on that level, and I had about 6 Mikos around the barrier, the artificial sun, and they can almost one-shot, they can pretty much 2-shot Yugi, and yep, wrong one. And Yugi has about 2,800 health. And that's without ramp up of damage. And she's also physically defensive. So the fact that she can almost literally 2-shot someone as bulky as this, because once you get her high enough, you're going to get damage in like 600, 700, 900. Miko just does so much damage that it doesn't even matter if she doesn't have any utility with any other tower. And that's not even talking about her other buffs. At level 3, she summons swords that she can use to stun enemies and further damage them. And at level 5, she grants a passive that if any tower is right next to her, that tower gets a damage buff. This tower basically encourages you to use her and only her. If you want, you can use her with Daiusei to increase the speed and how much, but Miko literally is the solitaire tower. If you're going to use her, you're going to use only her. And if you're good, and she's a very, very high maintenance tower, however, unlike Yuka and Kaguya, if you manage to use her just right, nothing is reliably getting cloaked because they will literally one shot everything. They can and they will one shot literally like I think even like if you're good enough, she can even one shot some of the earlier bosses, which says how much she can, just how much raw damage she can do. That's why she's pretty much going to be the lowest, the weakest S rank, because I would simply rather have these three, which can support other towers, than Miko, who encourages a playstyle where you can only use her. It's good, but not that good. Let's do Iron first. Iron Yagogoro. She's very straight, simple, unlike Kain. She fires arrows. She can fire multiple arrows. However, once she gets to level 3, she can do a multiple of debuffs. Let me grab her. Let me grab Kain too. Yep. She basically fires a bunch of arrows. Let me think. What at rank? Oh, I need to actually. I need to actually get her to level 3. Oh, this is awkward. Oh, she's not level 3 anyway. At level 3, she will sometimes throw a buff that does several things. She has one of 3. She has one of 4. One of them, as you saw right there, actually would freeze. She has ones that slow down enemies. Let's see if she does anything else. Yep, she does ice damage with a chance of freeze. She can lower the defense of the defenses of certain enemies. She can, I think, slow them down. I don't know what the last. Oh, yeah, there. Oh, and she does poison. She can do poison, which she is very utilitarian. I don't like the fact that the secret stocks are tied specifically to her level. I think she should have all access to all 4 blends at the start once you unlock them. I think it's fine. I don't really have a problem with her. She does deal damage, and the fact that she can just toss out any. Sure, the element is random. However, she still is niche. I would put her. She's bottom of A tier. Kain is interesting. Is the last tower. Okay, so how Kain works is she basically kind of works. She's basically what would happen if Komachi was actually useful. Her normal attacks actually have a passive that anytime they hit an enemy, it actually lowers their defense passively. And the higher she levels up, the more she's able to lower the defense of. However, at level 3, she gains a Hakutaku form because she is half Hakutaku. Like, you'll actually see it here. Yeah, there she is. There it is. Like, and she is massively. Yep. See, and the fact that she can go through her regular form and Hakutaku form at will is actually makes her good. And the fact that they draw aggro. She draws aggro. Granted, she's not the strongest. She is the bulkiest tower summon in the game. But it doesn't mean anything because you're mainly going to use her while on the tower. So, however, there is one problem. and that is her level 5 ability. So, just like with Miko and just like with where are they? Where is she? And just like Miko and Dai, Kine encourages a different playstyle. With Kine, it encourages more of a passive playstyle where you don't really do much because her level 5 should either passively upgrade towers when they're near her, or if they're near her, it decreases the price of how much you have to upgrade them. I say should because I'm pretty sure this ability is bugged. I spent, for testing and putting these ranks up, I tested every tower on this level just to see how they function, so I know where to place them. However, the problem comes in the fact that no matter what I did, the towers weren't cheaper, and the towers weren't leveling up on their own while being right next to Kine, which is such a weird thing that leads me to believe that specifically her level 5 ability is bugged and simply doesn't work. Because, like I said, giving a more passive traditional, because that's what Kine does. She causes you to have a more traditional tower defense playstyle, where instead of playing like Touhou Monster TD, you're playing more like a traditional tower defense where you're only placing the towers, you're not doing much anything, you're just upgrading them, and you basically have to play a part in that. The fact that she would either passively upgrade towers, or she would decrease the price of upgrading towers. It doesn't matter which one. The fact that doesn't work really makes it hard to grade Kine specifically. So I have to specifically grade her on a curve on if the ability did work. So theoretically, if the ability did work, she would be here. She has a lot of, even with the bugged ability, the ability to not only draw at force aggro like with Ron, and also have an ability to just turn normal attacks just passively debuffing enemy attack and defense, making any tower punch well above their weight, just makes her indefinitely better. But she still is the weakest because she literally cannot do anything by herself. She has to, unlike these four where you could theoretically use them by themselves, but you don't have to. You have to have other towers with Kine because she just simply can't do much by herself. Yeah, her attacks are slow. All they really do is debuff the defenses, but they don't do a lot of damage, which is about the fact that she's supposed to encourage a more supportive playstyle of, again, making you play a more traditional tower defense style. It works. I think it's balanced just fine, but the fact that she's bugged is just really, really hurtful. And I hope they eventually come patch her up, and also patch show up to possibly increase the chance. Basically, make it like if there's more level 5 shows, increase the chances of a blue star or a blessing point. So that way, it would encourage the playstyle similar to Miko, what this was trying to do. But more importantly, just patch Kine and allow however she was supposed to work to actually work. I think that's what hurts me the most, is the fact that she actually has the potential to be really good. She's just really neutered by something that is just that's just the problem with the developers. So that is, wait a minute. I just realized why. Wait a minute. Wait. Oh no. Yeah, you're right. I did put I put Marissa in. I just realized I put Marissa in the wrong tier, bottom of C tier. Oh boy. But yeah, so yeah, she just can't do anything. She's just so slow and um. So yeah, this is the tier list of Touhou Monster TD. I had fun doing this. Have fun playing it. I do eventually plan on doing a let's play of the game to show off each tower in function. So I will at least back up what I'm saying. I don't know when it'd be because I at least want to get part way through Mass Effect before I do. But yeah, this has been Dark Symphony 777. I hope you enjoyed the video, and